Hope you're doing well. My name is Kristyn Gordon. I am a second-year dental student at the University of New England. I'm originally from Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I came to the University of New England for my undergraduate as well. I did the dental hygiene 4+4 program, so it bridges into dental school. So I was able to do my bachelor's in hygiene while also having my prereqs done for dental school. While I was at the University of New England for undergraduate, some of the programs and extracurriculars that I really loved was the AHEC Scholars Program, as well as interprofessional different meetings and programs with other majors, as well as tutoring in Habitat for Humanity. I focused mostly on extracurriculars that were based in interprofessionalism as well as outreach, since those two things are very important to me and I think really shape who I want to be as a provider. It's kind of a roller coaster ride. When I was younger, I absolutely despised the dentist. We had a little clinic back home that accepted Medicaid that I would go to, and I never had good experiences, and I felt like I was just another number, and I just absolutely hated the experience, and I just associated the dentist with pain. It wasn't until I was a little bit older that I had orthodontic work that I realized dentistry doesn't have to mean pain, and I was able to experience both the confidence boost as well as the functional improvement from orthodontic work, and to see how much I changed personally, both the way my teeth look as well as feel and how confident I felt. I realized that this is something that I would want to do for other people. And I think the positive and the negative experiences I've had both impact me wanting to go into dentistry, because I want to be able to provide care to those regardless of their socioeconomic status and show that, you know, no matter where you come from, you do have the right to have pain-free and amazing dental work done. It shouldn't matter who you are and how much money you make, as well as I want to be a part of making people confident and to have a more functional smile. So both the negative and positive experiences I've had in life as far as dental work definitely impacts why I became interested in dentistry. I was absolutely terrified of this exam, like I think most pre-dentals are. I completed all of my prerequisites in 2 years instead of the traditional 4, and the last 2 years of my undergraduate were just hygiene courses. So when I was taking the DAT, it was about 1.5 years since I've gone through chemistry and all of those other prereqs. So I knew I had to spend a little bit more time just refreshing, because it was not fresh in my memory at all. So I started studying in January and I took the test in August, which I do not, you know, even if you need to refresh, I do not recommend spending that much time, just because I was so burnt out by the time the exam came around. That being said, you know, we got it done. So I can't say that it was, you know, meaningless to spend that much time. But just from the way I felt, I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. I used DAT Bootcamp. That was the only resource I used. I highly recommend them. As far as tips that I would give to other people, I would say please don't spend more than 4 months studying so you don't burn out. If it's at all possible, I would not work during studying. Maybe take the summer off. Can you work and study? Yes. But at what cost? How burnt out are you going to be? It's kind of a personal preference, but if you can manage without working, I think that takes a lot of the stress off, as well as limit your resources. A lot of my other peers had 3 or 4 different resources where they would have the Destroyer books, DAT Bootcamp, and other references, and it got to be too much for them, and again, they burnt out. So I would say those are my tips for the DAT, and I wish you luck. I would say the experiences I've had in the dental world. I was a dental assistant and then a hygienist, so I was able to kind of show instead of tell during my interview. So I was able to give certain instances where it kind of clicked for me that I really want to be a dentist, avoiding HIPAA, of course, but just being able to give certain instances, it really made my interview more personable, I think, because they cannot stand hearing the why dentistry question being answered with, I want to help people, or I like working with my hands, or I love science and art. They hear that all the time. So I think if you have any dental experience, being able to show them different experiences and moments with patients that it really did click and you were able to both weigh the pros and cons of dentistry and still choose to be a dentist, because we know that the dental field has its ups and downs, but if you can show that even with you knowing and experiencing some of the lows in dentistry, that you still want to be a provider, I think that's really key. When I interviewed at the University of New England, when you read the mission statement of the schools, which I highly recommend before the interview, they're very concerned with rural health. And during my undergraduate, like I said, I was doing the Caring for Underserved Pathways AHEC Scholars Program, which put us out into rural Maine and being able to experience the population, to get to know them, and having that experience, I was able to talk about that in the interview so that, again, I wasn't just telling them I care about rural health, I was showing them that I did this program where I had to dedicate 160 hours to this population that they care so much about. It was different than some of the more traditional interviews. Instead of having to apply and kind of wait to hear back, since I was in the early assurance 4+4 program, I was able to interview my sophomore year. So it was just me and a couple of other students that were also in the program, and we came up to the Portland campus because we were on the Biddeford campus at that point, and we did about a 40-minute MMI interview session. So we were all kind of put into a little hallway, and there was certain doors, and on the doors there was a scenario. We would read it for about a minute and then be allowed to go in the room and kind of talk and experience and do whatever the scenario had us do for about 8 minutes, and then we would switch. So we did that for the first half of the day, and then the second half was more of your traditional interviews. As far as how I felt, I didn't really know what to make out of it. I tried to be as authentic as possible, and I never felt that there was awkward silence or anything like that. It was very personable, which I really appreciate. I know a lot of people feel very intimidated by the MMI style, but I think the real world scenarios, it's a lot easier to talk about than, say, talk about yourself. So I enjoyed the MMI style. Kind of going off of my interview experience, what I tell other pre-dentals as far as tips go for interviews is, I would say find someone that you trust, kind of work through some of the answers so you're able to not trip over your words, and then maybe choose an advisor or someone who makes you a little bit more nervous, and again, work through those basic questions that you know you're going to get asked. As far as, again, MMI, I wouldn't necessarily practice that because there's no right answer. And so even if you try to prepare, it's probably going to be a different scenario. So I would just say try to talk to as many people as possible. I think a lot of us, when we're in pre-dental mode and we're so stressed out and studying, we kind of lose the interaction with people, which would make the MMI a little bit more daunting. So if you're just talking to people whenever you can, still being social, I think that's the best way to prepare for the MMI, because again, there's no golden answer. So preparing for it doesn't really work. So as long as you have experiences and are able to talk to somebody, I think you'll be just fine. So I picked University of New England because I really like the area it is in. Portland is absolutely beautiful. It's not a huge city, but it's not a small, town. And there's a lot of need in Maine as far as dentists goes, especially in rural Maine. So for me, I don't think you should go to dental school in a place that you can't see yourself living and can't see yourself helping that population. So I chose UNE because I see myself staying in Maine after graduation. It's a little bit harder than I thought. I anticipated the didactic aspect to be the hardest, and it is challenging. There's a lot of content, but I think the biggest aspect that I definitely struggled with was the change in thought of what failure is. So in undergraduate, we want to get good grades, and we obviously don't enjoy failing. In dental school, failure is inevitable. You're likely to fail something, whether it's a competency, a test, something. And the first time I failed a competency, I thought the world was going to end. And I cried, and I just felt so bad about myself, and the imposter syndrome was at its all-time high. Now that I'm a second year and I kind of have reworked my brain to accept that failure it's not an end. It's not like you're a failure because you failed. Failing is just saying you need to work a little bit more. You need to learn from this experience and move forward. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. You just failed this one aspect, and the instructors believe that you could be better. So reworking your brain into accepting failure, and kind of being able to take a fail and not shut down, just take it as motivation, and knowing that you need to work a little bit more and improve was the hardest aspect. As far as what I would recommend, I started Instagram just because I wanted to show pre-dental students that being in dental school isn't glamorous most of the time. And I wanted to showcase all of the raw emotions that I wish somebody would have showed me, so that when I was going through, say, my first failure in dental school, I didn't feel so alone. So one thing that I recommend is either having a journal, where if you don't want to showcase everything to everybody, just having a journal where you can write your emotions and thoughts, or starting a blog or a YouTube or something where you're able to get your feelings out and be able to maybe share that with somebody and have somebody validate your feelings. It really helps make you feel less alone, as well as I know that when you're a pre-dental, it's very competitive, whereas at least at my dental school, my classmates are there for one another, and even if you fail, there's no shame in that, and you're never going to be the only one that fails something. So being able to connect with your classmates really, really, really helps you get through those tough moments and become better for it. So I would recommend kind of sharing your emotions, whether it's personally on a journal, getting all your emotions out, or talking to classmates, or sharing it on social media. I think it's really helpful and cathartic to kind of have somebody else validate that you're not going crazy. Typically is going to be classes 8 to 5, mostly didactic. We do have clinical dentistry 1, which is 1 day a week where you're in the sim clinic. So from the get-go, you are in sim clinic learning restorations and being able to drill that first semester, which is really exciting and different than most schools. As far as what makes my school a little bit different is we don't have our classes separated. So instead of having, say, 8 different classes where you'd have perio and ortho or anything like that, we have bigger chunks of classes. So we have clinical dentistry, which is what other schools might consider operative. But as the years progress, you have clinical dentistry meaning different things. So operative, endo is also clinical dentistry. So different courses are lumped together. We also have patient care, which we have patient care 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as the years go through, where we have kind of a woven pattern where you have radiology, periodontology, oral surgery, pathology, treatment planning, and more, all in that one class. So I think that's kind of different than most schools where you have, perio class where you learn perio. So, we have only 5 or 6 classes, but within those classes, you're getting a lot of subjects, which I think is hard to wrap your head around when you first come to the University of New England. My classmates and my instructors. At my school, we're a class of 64, so we all get to know each other and really, really care about one another. We're pass-fail, so there's no competition really. So we always lift each other up. So if somebody's struggling in a certain aspect, other classmates will jump in and help them. There's no shame in that, which is really, really nice about our school. And it's something I never knew how much would impact me. I don't feel like I have to bottle up, moments where I feel like I'm struggling in something. I don't have to just take it away and be shameful. At my school, I'm able to lean on my classmates and kind of voice, hey, I'm having a really hard time in this one subject. Is there anybody who, maybe is geared more towards that subject? And it's really, really saved me a lot of times. It made it worthwhile going to school instead of feeling, depleted every day, not wanting to go. Two things. One is to find a mentor. That could be a dentist or a dental student. That is the biggest piece of advice, I think, because having somebody who is either currently in the spot you're trying to be in or who has gone through it is going to be, you're going to receive the best advice from those people. The second piece of advice is to, if you can, go above shadowing. I know shadowing is what is required, but as far as dentistry goes, I feel like unless you're there assisting in the moment, you're not fully getting the full picture of what's going on. You're not experiencing the stress. You're not experiencing, the patient relying on you, which is a totally different feeling than just kind of watching what's going on. So I would say if you can, get your radiology license or go through an assisting program and kind of go above just watching. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and watching this video, and thank you for FutureDDS for having me. If anyone has any questions, or if you need a mentor, or just have a few questions about dentistry in general, please feel free to message me on Instagram. I'll put my handle down below. It's The Journey to DMD. I also have my own website, and I also have a YouTube channel. If you find yourself needing more areas to kind of get in contact with me, I'm always open. I have a very open door policy. If you DM me, I try to be very responsive, and kind of nothing is off limits. If you need someone to have mock interview practice with, if you need someone to proofread your personal statement, or again, if you just need someone to vent to, I want to make myself available to you guys. So yeah, with that, thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a good day.